Hey, welcome back to part 3 of Project Wally. On today's episode, I'm going to focus on cutting out and removing all the rotted and rusty metal on the passenger side, and then fabricating and welding in new panels. I've got a friend, Eric, who's coming over to give me a hand with that. He's a much better welder than I am, so hopefully I can pick up a thing or two. And then once that's finished, I'm going to try and also get the actual rocker welded in. So hopefully we can make good progress on today's episode. So come on, let's dive in. Taking a quick look here, you can see I've started to remove the seam sealer and get it pushed back to what is fresh, clean metal so I can know where I need to sand and cut. I cut out a section of the wheel well right here that was rusty and had some holes in it, and then I cut out this section of the floorboard back that went up under and was spot welded to the wheel well on the other side. That was real bad, and it's kind of bad in here, but there's not a whole lot I can really do about that. So I think my plan is I'm going to start bending some metal, and I'm going to overlap and have it kind of bend in a U shape and go back out under that way like the wheel well did. And then I'm also going to put in a section of floor here. This is as far as I've gotten so far. Pretty flush and decent back here. And not too bad in here. I didn't really film much. I have been at it constantly. I was trying to get as much done with him here as we could. Yeah, so we were bending, shaping, and welding. He did most of the welding, and his welder did work a lot better than mine did. Yeah, it was a long day. I think we've been at it. It's like 9 o'clock at night now. We started probably around 11. All right, my next step is going to be trying to weld some of these seams together just to make it a little more watertight. Not a big deal because I'm going to just use absurd amount of seam sealer on all of this to try and seal it up. But I've kind of cleaned it up, and I have all the different layers of new flooring and wheel well I added on the inside that are sticking through. So I'm just going to try and tack weld it all together just to seal it some. And then I just bent and fabricated this little section of metal to make up for this gap that I had here. So I've got it held in, so I'm going to try and weld it up too. So yeah, I'll give you a nice little time lapse of me most likely welding very poorly. I just stuck the roll cage back up in here, and I marked the holes on the roll cage, so now I can actually drill those out, so I'll be able to get the bolts through. And I also cut out this little scrap piece of metal and drilled holes out on it at the distance apart the bolts need to be. And I got me some grade 8 bolts, and I'm going to weld them on like that. And then I can just stick this panel in there. The bolts will be the correct distance. I'll make sure they line up with the holes I drill on the side. And then I can just weld this panel in, or this little piece of scrap metal in, to the back of that to hold the bolts in place. Got this little bracket with the bolts welded to it, and I just made sure that the marks I made from the roll cage match up, which they do, or close enough that I can make it work. So now I'm going to center punch these holes and then drill them out, and then once I have the holes drilled out, I can stick bolts through it and have this on the other side held in place. And then once it's held in place with the bolts, I can start tack welding this in. Okay, so I got those drilled out and I got them lined up pretty good. The left hole was just a little bit off, so I made up for it when I was drilling. Should still be well within my little margin of error, and if not, I can just ever so slightly widen the actual bracket on the roll cage because it's got plenty of metal on each side, so that'll be good. As long as I tack weld it in right, we'll be good. So my next step is going to be to paint the back of this with some Steel-It, which is a weldable paint. It's like stainless steel in a can. That way, since the back of this is going to get welded right up against there, I want a coat of paint on it, and I still need to be able to weld it. I'm going to try and sand up in there a little bit around where the bracket's going to go, and then I will also spray Steel-It in there, so then I can weld it and still have some paint on there. And then after it's all welded in, I'm going to hit it with some rust converting primer, and then I'll probably spray some Steel-It on top of it again. Now I have everything painted with Steel-It, just not the back side of this, because I can still get to that after I weld. So I stuck the bolts through, and it's holding that bracket in place. So all I have to do is get some good tacks on it all through there. Obviously over in that corner, there's nothing I'm going to be able to do, which is why I did it on one big bracket. That way I can spread them out as far as I can reach, and then it won't, all depend on just trying to hold that bolt on that side. So yeah, it's actually turned out pretty good, better than I expected. So I've got the bracket all welded on. I can reach probably about 80 to 90% of it, so I did as much as I could reach all the way around, so that should be nice and strong. The bolts are tack welded onto that bracket to keep them from spinning, or sorry, the nuts are tack welded onto that bracket to keep them from spinning when I tighten down the bolts, and everything is drilled through and tapped on this side. The bolts are probably still pretty hot because I kept them in there to keep the threads clean, but yep, everything threads nice and good. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I went ahead and measured this gap. It's about 3.5 inches, so I'm going to make the piece about 4 inches long, and then it's about 1 inch down and 1 inch in, so I'm going to make it 3 inches wide, and then I'm going to bend it with 1 inch coming down, and then it'll give me plenty of overhang up here, and then I'm going to weld that in. So I went ahead and already marked and measured it out on a piece over there, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut it. Hey guys, I just want to take a second to say that if you're enjoying the content, it does take extra time for me to make these videos, so if you find any of this helpful, please drop a like for the video and maybe think about subscribing if you want to see more content like it. And even if you have a moment, give me a comment, tell me what you liked about the video and what you think needs work. Thanks. So now I'm going to mark out 1 inch down so I know where to bend. Put it in the vise with the bend. Grab my trusty blacksmith hammer, grab my beautiful torch, and then we're going to heat the metal around the bend there. It'll take longer to heat because it's clamped on the vise. The vise is going to be absorbing some of the heat. Then give her a tap. When you're first hitting it, it'll be kind of hard to hit it closer to the bend. So if you give her a few taps up top, it'll kind of give you some more leverage and help fold it over. But then once you start to get the bend, start focusing more towards the actual spot you want it to bend. Otherwise you'll deform the top. So just focusing right here will give you a nice 90-degree bend. Looks good enough for me. So I've got this ground up and fit in now, so now I can weld it. And I'll probably stick a piece of metal behind this and just fill it with some welds. So here's a quick look at that panel I did. I went ahead and ground down the weld. That way it won't push up against the rocker patch that I do and kind of bow it out right there. I have also cut a little piece to go behind here so I can fill it with weld. One thing I want to mention that I've forgot twice now is on this panel, I forgot to spray it with the Steel It first. So that's not great. I've done that one other time. I've been pretty good about it, but twice now I've gotten a little too excited and welded it in before I realized what I did. So that's not great. So this little piece is over there drying. I sprayed it, and yeah. So now I guess while that's drying, I can trace out and cut my patch panel. So when I cut out my rocker, I mentioned that I saved this piece. That way it'd be easier to trace out earlier. And this is when that's coming in handy. I just I left a little chunk on there when I cut out the rocker. So I measured that and it was about 4 inches. So I made sure to line this up on the bend here and then make sure the corner lined up with the 4 inches. And then I went ahead and traced it. So now I'm gonna cut it out. As I usually do, I'm gonna cut a little bit over the line to give myself a little margin for error. That's the panel cut. Let's go test the fit. Okay guys, here's the rocker all fit up. I did a little grinding on the top and a little bit on the sides to make it fit up just a little bit more. Got pretty good fit up here and along the top. And then along this edge, it's kind of a concerning gap. That's gonna be pretty hard to weld, or at least weld and make it look decent. Okay, so I've got it clamped here and then the magnets to kind of hold it flush. I'm going to start and tack it here and probably here. And I'm going to have to bend it a little as I go. But once I get this side tacked, I'll do one in the middle. And then I'll come to this side and line this side up and tack it too. I'll probably have to hold it down a little bit. But, you know, do my best. It's not perfect at the bottom seam. I was never going for perfect. I was going for no big holes in my Jeep, so I don't really care about that. I'm going to cover it with new Metal Cloak rocker rails anyway, so not a big deal. Okay guys, well, that finishes up this patch panel. I've got it welded all the way around now. The next step would be grinding down the weld and making it flush to make it look, you know, smooth. But again, I'm not worried about making it that perfect. It's going to be covered anyway, and this is becoming more and more of a rock crawling off-road rig for me. I still will daily it a decent amount, but I'm not worried about making it a show car. I'm going to put armor on this. It's going to get dented. It's going to get scratched. It's no big deal to me. If you made it this far in the video, thanks for sticking around. I think I'm going to go ahead and end part 3 here because it's probably gotten pretty long already. I got a little demoralized when I first dug into it. It kind of broke my heart a little bit seeing how bad it was, and I didn't think I would be able to fix it. But I feel a lot better now that it's done, and I don't know, I feel like I've accomplished something. My welds look way better than they did when I started. I've learned doing this. So, I don't know, it just feels a little bit more like my Jeep now than just anyone else's Jeep. If you guys are liking the content, please drop me a like, comment, tell me what you want to see, tell me what you liked about the video, what you didn't like. And then, yeah, if you want to see more of this, feel free to subscribe, because I've got more content coming. I'm going to do the whole driver side next, and then after that I'm going to finally move on to doing my upgrades, a bigger lift, new axles. I'm going to do new fenders. I'm going to wrap this thing in armor. I'm pretty excited. And then if I get through all that sometime in the next couple months, I'm going to try and actually take it off-road and go on a nice trip again. That's kind of what I'm building towards, but thanks for sticking around, guys. See you on the next one.